Story 1. Cursed by you, I am a cursed person, cursed to live, to see the hours pass, the days, the weeks. I have watched as the years slog by with all the flair and vitality that I no longer have, the same wonder that you once held in your strong grasp, a strength that cursed us both, but went further with you. It killed every part of you first before finally stopping your heart. I watched it happen, frozen in place with so many voices telling me what to do. I couldn't help you. You reached for me, begged me, cried. For me, your voice grew hoarse until it was nothing more than a whisper. Your tears flowed like twin rivers until your eyes were red and raw. Your hand, long fingers that you used to twirl in my hair, trembled. Nails clawed at the ground. They broke and bled. Your callous palms lasted longer, but it was worse when that toughness was scraped away. I watched your hand fall to the GR, and after days of reaching for me, I watched as it stopped moving. It was only after you died that the ice that encased my body melted. The brilliant sun you carried in your chest let out one last solar flare that destroyed everything in its path. It freed me, burned me, and made all those voices against you silent once more. They couldn't hold me any longer, but in return I could no longer hold you. You were the sun, and I the moon. You were brilliant and bright, and yet destructive. You ignited everything around you, starting with yourself to your body was the kindling to your fire. No one realized this. I didn't realize this until you burned out. They thought you set fire to the world so you could reshape it however you pleased, but you were never that cruel, never that ambitious. They didn't realize that you were your first victim. I was the moon. Calm and gentle, but passive when I should have been firm. I moved like the ocean, or so you told me. I accepted everything, adjusted to everyone's needs. I took up space, and yet very few noticed me. Always there, but often forgotten. You saw me. You were the first person that truly saw me. And I let you die. No words will ever be enough to lessen that terrible blow. I am cursed to live while you were cursed to die. But no matter how much time has passed, I still see you. Your smile appears in every sunbeam, the messy locks of your hair in every shadow. I see your confident stride from the corner of my eye. I hear your laugh in the cracking of a fire. At first it was comforting. It was like you were still with me, even after I betrayed you, even after I did nothing to save you. But then you lingered, and you changed. There are fangs in your smile now. Your lips curl in a way I never saw in life. It's almost cruel, curling in a way that makes the hairs at my nape stand tall sometimes. Your teeth part and your tongue glides over your gleaming white fangs. Red follows in its wake. The shadows that once reminded me of your lovely dark hair become sharper, jagged and pitch black. They look more like hard lines of ink on the ground. Sometimes, when I pass under the shade of a tree, I feel something on my skin, like spider webs in the breeze. Something reaches for me, sending shivers across my body with their light touch. I try to brush it away, but the feeling remains until I'm out of the shadows. From the corner of my eye, I see you sprinting towards me. I know that it's you. I'd know you anywhere, your body, your voice, your scent. I'd know your blood by taste alone if I were crazy enough to drink it. I think I might be crazy. You run towards me every day. Even Hawk, you're dead. You move like a panther ready to strike. Lithe and swift, nothing is an obstacle. not people, plants, buildings. I see you coming for me and my heart rate spikes, panic shoots adrenaline in my veins and I feel the urge to flee. But the moment my eyes dart to you, you're gone. Not even a trace of your presence. The only thing that remains is my fear. It's your laugh that finally broke me. It was the last to change. The thing I love the most about you. The freedom and joy in your laugh. It was exciting, comforting. A melody so unique that nothing could ever come close to inspiring me the way your laugh did. Then, when it changed, I began to realize the truth of these visions. They weren't your last gift to me. No, they were your last punishment. E.N.T. I hear your laugh everywhere now. It used to just be something that echoed in fire, but it's more than that now. I hear you in static, from a radio or a TV or even the buzz of fluorescent lights. Your laugh, no, it's like a cackle now, loud and harsh, a stuttering staccato that seems to clash with my heartbeat. We used to be one. And now you are doing everything in your power to be my opposite. Every mundane sound carries your laugh, the hum of a car engine, the clacking of a keyboard, the beep of a timer. I hear you in footsteps and sighs and yawns, a laugh, a cack, a caw. It's mocking me, it's driving me insane. The more I hear it, the more I can picture the face that makes such a sound. It's your face, but it's broken, eyes that once gleam. D with intelligence are now flat and empty. Your skin is gray, your cheeks sallow. That terrifying smile looks to why. The corners of your lips are bloody, like they were ripped apart so that you could haunt me with more of those unnatural fangs. You laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh. You don't even pause to take a breath. Why would you? You don't breathe anymore. You don't breathe. You don't laugh. You don't smile. You don't run. You don't do anything anymore. And yet, it's been 10 years, and I still see you. I still love you. I don't know how you feel. Then I remember you are dead. You can't feel. I know only 3 things. 1, you are dead. 2, I killed you. 3, you haunt me. Story 2. Serendipity. My death came. Suddenly it happened one sunny, windy day in October while I whistled a merry tune and strode down Main Street. The air around me was filled with the delicious aromas of wood fires and fermenting apples. The sidewalks and streets were alive with the skitter of vividly colored leaves. Then, 10 feet in front of me, a man appeared from a doorway. He was short and thin and, most alarmingly, wore a black ski mask. I stopped dead in my tracks as he sprinted past me and was gone. Then a policeman in a black uniform with a polished brass shield on his chest emerged from that same doorway. I recalled him shouting something, I don't remember what, and then some powerful force struck the back of my head. Thus began my oblivion. I was dead, July 2330. Imagine being roused from an exceptionally deep slumber for H.T. There is nothing. And then there is a something. In my youth, this something was always an annoyance, occurring in successive, ever more disturbing waves. Now, over 3 centuries later, I experienced a different kind of awakening. It began with a very loud noise. I likened it to a giant, malevolent ogre roaring inside a concrete wall tunnel, the effect of which was an ear-shattering reverberation. Next came the shaking. Not that someone shaking your shoulder to wake you up kind of shaking. but a vibration strong enough to split the bedrock of the earth itself, as if it were nothing more than a thin, brittle water cracker. I opened my eyes amidst a deafening, violent churn of earth and rock, joined soon thereafter by a searing wave of heat, and a flash of radiance so brilliant that any mortal being would have evaporated in its glare. As my ability to reason rose from its own ashes, curiosity replaced my annoyance. Just what the hell was going on? Perhaps my centuries-long oblivion was to blame, but it took me a while to become fully cognizant. By then the roar had subsided, the ground had stopped cracking, tumbling, self-inverting, and restabilizing, and I found myself sitting on a bleak, scorched landscape. Above me, an ashen sky bold with lightning-laced clouds, while fragments of charred wood smoldered about me. Bits of my own shattered coffin, I surmised. I stood up and assessed myself, dressed as I was in my usual jeans and t-shirt. I felt just as I had before I die, in my 30s and standing. To lose 20 pounds, recalling the sharp force that had struck my head, I touched the back of my skull and was relieved to find no holes. But something was definitely off, for I could plainly see my surroundings. Things like trees and houses and clouds. Through myself. That's when it hit me. I was a ghost. October 31st, 2050 present day. It was dreadfully windy, too. Night, strong enough to pelt me with dirt and gravel, the bits penetrating halfway through me before slowing and falling to the ground. This phenomenon was due to what I term my fractional solidity. I was neither fully solely nor purely transparent. This fractional solidity was very important. It allowed me to walk on solid ground without falling through the earth and to pick up small objects and move them about. A full moon had risen, or as full a moon as it could ever be. Its face glowed behind a thin veil of clouds streaming overhead, its roundness forever marred by that huge, ugly chunk Bitanu T. Given my knowledge of astronomy, I believe that missing chunk of the moon had caused the end of the world. Some immense asteroid must have slammed into the moon. The collision would have ejected enormous chunks of debris, many of which fell to earth in a rain of unimaginable destruction. I'd gathered more direct evidence of this over the past century, having found numerous bits of glassy, black obsidian lying about. Some were the size of pencil erasers, while others were as large as office buildings. Huge chunks of this material implied intense, explosive heat. In all these years, I'd never found anyone to discuss my ideas with, and for obvious reasons, nobody had written books or magazine articles about it after the fact. The key point of my statement is this: I'd never found anyone alive, no humans, no animals. I'd walked thousands of miles in the first few years, searching for someone, anyone. I'd entered every building I found, shouted out to anyone who might be listening. The only replies were my own reverberant echoes. Near the end of year 10, I had despaired to the point of suicide, but I knew that was impossible. I'd only found skeletons scattered across hundreds of square miles of desolation. Imagine my state. The world had ended, and everyone I'd ever known and loved was dead. Then my ultimate irony, that being dead and buried before the apocalypse had quite literally saved my life. This question remained: Why had the end of the world awakened only me from death? I knew there might be others like me somewhere in the world, but by this point I doubted I'd ever find them. Soon after the apocalypse, once the rains of ash, the atmospheric firestorms, and the repeated pelting of the earth by smaller chunks of debris had subsided. The world grew quiet. My piece of terra firma grew as cold as the Arctic for 30 years, until the climate bounced back. Glaciers retreated, and plants extended their first tender shoots toward the sun. Then the land was green again. The first wildflower I found in late 2372, I still have it. After the nuclear winter, I discovered that where I'd been interred in my coffin was only 40 or 50 miles from an immense impact crater, nearer to which everything had vaporized. So I set off in the opposite direction, toward what had been the city of Chicago, in the hopes of meeting others like myself. A few days later, I saw the Chicago skyline, and my heart sank. The apocalypse had really done a number on the place. Gargantuan chunks of skyscrapers lay scattered about, while other structures had collapsed into neat piles of rubble. Some of the older stone and brick buildings, however, still stood intact tonight. As the wind streamed in from Lake Michigan, I stood at the base of the clock tower of the old Wrigley building. The clock's enormous black hands were silent and unmoving. Given my now our weightlessness, I climbed the stairs in several minutes and reached the clockworks chamber hundreds of feet above street level. The clock's big rusty gears, cams, and levers still mesmerized me, and though a shockwave had blown in the west clock face, its black clock hands remained, though bent slightly inwards. As chance would have it, a public building tour had been in progress when the apocalypse struck, because dozens of skeletons were scattered about the clockworks, both youngsters and adults. While the wind whistled through the immense round opening, I moved to a workbench where I'd assemble one of my favorite wind instruments, gruesome as it sounds. Human skulls, when placed at precise angles relative to the wind, can play a musical note. Though the sound is quite faint and airy, it has something to do, I'm sure, with the size and shape of the cranial cavity, along with the small hole at the rear of each ocular orbit. I stood at my line of skulls, 12 of them, ranging from child size to big guy size, and began to turn them this way and that in small increments to catch the wind at just the right angle. An hour later, HD of them were producing tones together, creating a haunting harmony that rose and fell with the wind. Next, I found two humorous bones and tap away on another row of skulls. My xylophone, given why partial translucency, lifting and moving the bones was slow, patient work. I wasn't a musician when I was alive, so perhaps this was my new calling. Later, when I grew bored, I moved to the precipice just inside the missing clock face and felt the wind in my hair. The wind and rain were all important to me, of course, for they were my only ways of feeling touched, and times like these were my psychotherapy, my way of staying sane. Then something caught my eye, a dark shape moving down Kinsey Street. I'd been fooled by blowing debris 1,000 times before, but when the shape made a left turn at an intersection, my heart skipped a beat. Who or what was this? I trembled with excitement as I charged back down the steps, ran down Kinsey, and rounded the corner There it was, just a block ahead of me. It moved slowly, as if hobbling along, so it was easy to catch up. It was definitely human, and by its gait, I guessed it was a man, a bit shorter than me, but appearing solid, not translucent. A living man just a few feet behind him. However, I noticed something strange. His right ear appeared to be canine, covered with long fur that shivered in the wind. "Hello," I said, though my ghost voice was quite faint. When the wind died down for a moment, I cleared my throat and shouted hello. He stopped, and my heart skipped a beat. He froze in place, and I drew up beside him. "Are you real? Are you alive?" I asked in as loud a voice as I could muster. His head jerked Shaw, replied toward me, his large dark eyes fixing upon mine. His shock was evident. "Don't be afraid. I'm just a ghost," I said. When he finally spoke, his voice was guttural and reminiscent of a huge dog growling. "Tonight is transformation," he said, then raised his head, closed his eyes, and howled at the moon. Oh, what a tragic, melancholic moan. I fought back my own terrors. His face, I saw in the moonlight, wasn't quite human. His jaw and nose were elongated, together forming a stubby, rounded muzzle. I waited for him to stop howling before speaking again, when a thought occurred to me. "Are you a werewolf?" He nodded. His breathing labored. Then he began to speak, haltingly at first, about his curse of being immortal and of having to endure the agony of transforming from man to wolf on each full moon. The problem was that, after the apocalypse, he'd never achieved the satisfaction of becoming fully wolf. This was because the moon's face was never completely full anymore. With that big chunk missing, he could only transform halfway. I felt terrible for him. Alone, without a single living animal to chase down and feed upon. A torment for a wolf. What a horror to undergo a monthly torture of cracking bones and stretching flesh and only get halfway there. In the lore of the past, werewolves were viewed as evil, demonic Cretu race, but he hadn't chosen to become this way. Some other werewolf, centuries ago, had attacked him and brought this curse upon him. I was puzzled at his immortality, but he had no explanation for it. After having pitied myself for the past century, a lump formed in my throat, for I could never imagine the suffering this man had endured. He talked for an hour, followed by a period of intense pain in which he regained his human form, after which he continued as dawn approached. We sat upon the collapsed ruins of a skyscraper, while I shared my own tale of how I became a ghost after being shot dead and buried for 3 centuries. Unlikely as it was, we were born within a few years of each other. Because he'd lived through the 3 centuries of my oblivion, he was able to recount the world's history that I missed. At long last, my theory was confirmed. He described how, several months before the apocalypse, astronomers had sighted an immense asteroid on a collision course with the moon. With tears in his eyes, he recounted how humanity had mounted every planetary defense imaginable, including nuclear missiles and immense ground-fired lasers, but nothing had so much as nudged that huge rock from its fated course. Within days of its smashing into the moon, the first chunks had rained down, some of them 10 miles across. After that we fell silent. We just sat together, both marveling at being able to converse with another living soul. Just before noon, he rose to his feet. I rose with him. When he began to walk, I remained instinctively at his side. Then he halted, his face pinching, and I saw tears on his cheeks. "I am a lone wolf," he explained with grim resignation. "I am used to go on alone, but I will remember you forever. The only soul I've encountered since the world ended." We embraced, though he moved partway through my ectoplasmic body as we did so. We both wept until he turned away and set off. I watched his shrinking form until he rounded a corner and vanished behind the hulk of a ruined building. He never looked back. While I hiked to the lake shore, a newfound peace settled in my heart. I sat on the beach as the sun shone down and warmed my face. Then, for the first time since the apocalypse, I lay down, closed my eyes, and felt the wind lulling me to sleep. My last thought before I slipped under was, I never learned his name. Story 3. The Hair of Another, A Kiss Goodnight. That was all Kyoka gave to Josh. That was all she ever seemed to give him. Lately, before she curled up with some book about hyperfungated soil or whatever agricultural nonsense her job involved. It had barely even been on his lips tonight. There was no Tawazaboo it. Josh knew exactly why she refused to touch him. Lately, she could try to hide it, and Buddha knows she tried. The root of the problem was as clear as day, male pattern baldness. She thought he was disgusting, rightly so. 32 years old, hairline already retreating further back every day, the crown thinning into non-existence. A pathetic excuse for a man who didn't deserve the sexual satisfaction of his perfect wife. Her eyes flicked across the page, his across her. The sound of the pages rubbing together. That wretched sound, he could feel it in his toes, hater, head. That was all he could feel for this woman he'd shared a bed with for 6 years. Hated how beautiful she always looked. Hated how she always smiled when their eyes met. Hated how soft her skin was. Hated how good she looked naked. She could be with any man she wanted. A Japanese man would never start balding in his 30s. Wouldn't dream of it. It would bring to mock hate shame to the hair of their ancestors. So many perfect heads of thick, luxurious raven hair waiting for her delicate, pure white fingers to run through. His dirty British hair wasn't worthy of her, and it never would be. God forbid she ever touch him again, and they ended up having a baby. What if it was cursed with his family's follicle failings? How would she cope with having to look at her bull baby every day? She wouldn't. Next thing he'd be mopping up her intestines after her ritual suicide to kiss goodbye. That was all she gave to Josh. That's all she ever seemed to give him lately. Before she left for work at 7, to fill in spreadsheets about the fluctuality of the housing rental market or whatever nonsense her job involved. The kiss had barely even woken him up. On the commute to work, he always stood. Couldn't risk sitting, someone standing over him on a busy train, their eyes fixed on the top of his head. Standing was safe. He was always the tallest in the carriage. His height earned him respect and admiration from the Japanese, their imperial overseer. From here, Hikawa looked down on them, all nodding off, all with faces lit by their screens. The preschool children in the classroom trembled and shook in fits, as if possessed by demons or yak. Their laughter bounced off the walls. Smiles slashed across their faces whenever their bright, listening eyes met his. Josh knew what they were thinking. knew what they were laughing at. Every time he leaned over to check their workbooks, help pack their bags, or put on their shoes, their gaze burned a hole into the dome of his skull. Who was the balding white monster they were looking upon come the end of the day? While Josh was stacking chairs and wiping tables, his manager, Lucas, appeared, 15 years older, still blessed with a full hazelnut mane, the kind of man who got more than a peck on the lips from his wife each night, the kind of man Kilka probably lusted after. He put the man into manager. "Josh, can I have a quick word?" Lucas said, poking his head through the door, Australian accent still thick after 20 years in Japan. Josh nodded, careful not to dip his head too far. Lucas set his backpack on the freshly wiped table. He'd have to clean it again now. Lucas motioned for him to sit, though he himself stayed standing. Josh ran a hand through his thinning hair, pushing it back as far as he could. "I'll cut to the chase," Lucas began. "I've heard from some of the Japanese teachers about you wearing a bandana in class. Now I see it's true. It's a headband, not a bandana. My hair is getting long, and it keeps it out of my face, whatever you call it. It's not in the dress code. If we let you break the code, where does it end? Others will start bending the rules." Lucas kept talking. Josh's attention slipped. A small insect crawled out from Lucas's hair, inching down the side of his face, a thin trail of blood following its path. "Are you listening, Josh?" "Yeah, I can't wear my headband, or whatever," he said, running his palm down his face. "You don't wear it to keep hair out of your eyes." Josh looked up, brow furrowing. "Your hair," Lucas said. "I know you worrying about it, trying to hide your hairline. I know how you feel, Josh." "How could you?" Josh snorted. "You've got tea. He hair of a Roman god." Lucas gripped his fringe with both hands. Slowly, he began to pull. Skin parted, the hairline peeled away. The sound was like a bandage tearing from scabbed skin. Josh covered his mouth. Alding in the scream, the vomit. "You're a monster. I'm a man, no different from you." Lucas reached out his hand. "Don't say that. No man would wear a wig. It's not a wig. It's a custom-made tuppet." The hairpiece hung halfway back across his head. Underneath, patches of wispy hair clung to his pale scalp. "I've known you 8 years, and you never guessed. No one has, and I'm trusting you to keep this between us, because I think I can help you." "How?" Josh fought against his eyes, doing everything in his power to keep them from the hellscape atop Lucas's head. Lucas took a card from his wallet and slid it across the table. Josh hesitated, then picked it up, turning it over in his hands. The card was thick and velvety, expensive. "The Okuyama Clinic," he said under his breath. "Go there, take my word for it. They will do more than fix your hair problem. They will turn you into a new man, a kiss to welcome him home." That was all his wife gave Josh. That was all she ever seen to give him lately before she launched into stories about the aerofluidity of Boeing plane wings or whatever nonsense she dealt with in her job. He had barely even taken his shoes off before her lips were on his face. Josh had been late getting home after his talk with Lucas, but Kyoka still had dinner warm on the table. Grilled salmon, rice, miso soup, an assortment of vegetables. She was always making food like this for him. The message wasn't lost on him. He was too fat for her, too. An 84-kilogram balding beast He sat at the kitchen table, pushing florets of sesame-coated broccoli into his mouth while Kyoka clunked about in the kitchen. "What are you doing?" he said, his voice sharp. "I thought the sink needs cleaning. Always trying to find ways to busy yourself. No interest in sitting with your husband and conversing, huh?" "You're right, Joshie." She grabbed her cup of green tea and sat beside him, rubbing his thigh. "How was work today, then? What are you teaching at the moment?" Josh placed his chopsticks down and leaned back with a grin. "What am I teaching?" He stopped to laugh. "What can I teach them? What can they learn from me? Everything they learn from here on out will only serve to make their lives worse. Yeah, isn't that pretty bleak for 5-year-olds? Bleak. What do you know of bleak?" He laughed again, not his usual laugh. "Kids live their lives as if they were in disguise, wearing costumes, even elaborate hairpieces. No fear of judgment from the world, I think. They're just being kids." She took her hand away from his thigh, moving the warmth of her cup into both hands. "Is that what you think, is it? What does someone in disguise have to fear? There are no repercussions for those in a disguise. They can remove it at any point and become someone else. I guess it was a rough day." Then Kyoka sighed, standing up and kissing the top of his head. Josh knew it was no more than a taunt. He'd show her. The Okuyama Clinic was on the 4th floor of one of the indistinguishable glass towers in the center of Nagoya. The elevator was a box of mirrors. Josh saw himself from every angle. Each one was worse than the last. The reception was devoid of natura. A light washed in total white the floors, the walls, the ceiling. The whiteness swallowed everything. Sculptures of human heads were scattered throughout the room. Wood, clay, bronze, Asian, African, Greek, Roman. Josh approached the reception desk. A man with thick, black-framed, circular glasses and even thicker black hair sat straight waiting. "Hey, I'd like to make an appointment." "I'm afraid it doesn't work like that here, sir." The man adjusted his spectacles and looked Josh up and down. "You need to be referred by another client." Josh pulled the business card out of the inner pocket of his Harrington jacket and pushed it towards the man. "Lucas Emerton referred me." The man's mouth slowly curved up into a smile. "In that case, please go right on through. Someone will see you shortly." Through the doors was a laboratory even wider than the reception. The room was divided into two by a glass partition. On the glass were sketches of Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, along with equations and religious scripture. On the other side of the partition, a woman adjusted a large metal lamp in front of a reclining examination chair. Josh wandered a few steps inside, hands stiff in his pockets. "Hi, I am here about ... The woman didn't stop what she was doing, but rather just put a long, slender finger to her lips. Figuring this was all a mistake, Josh turned back for the doors, only to be greeted by the man from reception coming through, now in a white lab coat and a pair of thinner frame glasses. "Please sit, Mr. Clark," the man said, ushering Josh towards the seat. "How do you know my name? I never ... double quotes. Sit." His tone was much more commanding this time. Josh obliged, leaning back in the chair. Flashbacks to dental offices. "I am Dr. Okuyama." He tapped his hand against his chest before pointing to the woman. "This is Nurse Okuyama. No relation. Dr. Okuyama positioned himself at the head of Josh, the lamp warm against his skull. He took a firm hold of Josh's head, manipulating it in his hands. "Mr. Clark, you have an exquisitely shaped skull. Yes, there is a lot we can do with a shape like this." Josh smiled, thankful someone was finally giving his symmetrical skull the praise he thought it had always deserved. Dr. Okuyama returned to the foot of the chair, pushing the lever down to bring Josh back upright. "You should know that these tuppets don't come cheap. We don't use any synthetic material here. What we produce comes entirely from fresh human hair." The nurse came behind Josh and began placing a series of varying hair pieces atop his head. "The pieces we create come with their own personality. Because of this, you lines see a shift in your own personality while you wear it. Even more importantly, you must never wear the piece for more than 12 hours. Beyond that point, the skin begins to suffocate. We wouldn't want that." Dr. Okuyama gave a nod to the nurse. Satisfied with the current hairpiece clinging loosely to Josh, she placed the remaining pieces on the counter, picked up a clipboard, and stepped Bessie to the doctor. "Doctor, do you suppose he will use this as a disguise to seduce his wife?" She lifted the clipboard in front of her face to shield her words. Josh cleared his throat. The nurse peeked over the top of the board, and the doctor turned toward him, scratching his eyebrow. "Mr. Clark, this piece is for you to use as you see fit. Although I am curious what you intend to use it for." Josh laughed, not his usual laugh, a kiss to send him off. That was all the woman ever seemed to give him lately before sending him on his week-long business trip to Osaka, telling him she could even take time off from performing appendectomies or whatever nonsense she dealt with at work. She had barely even spent 15 minutes trying to convince him the how turn it into a mini-romantic getaway. He knew what it really meant. She could not wait to have the place to herself. He couldn't remember where she worked. She never spoke of her job, but he knew she always watched a classic film every Monday at 5 o'clock at the Indie Cinema in Fushimi, not far from the Okuyama Clinic. This week Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo was screening. The hairpiece clung warm to his scalp as he sat waiting in the lobby nursing a black coffee. Josh had never liked coffee, but the hair thirsted for it, demanded it. He sat back, arm draped over the chair, legs spread wide, dominating the room. Eyes drifted toward him. The hair liked that. He ran a hand slowly through his new bangs, pleasing it. The cinema was busier than he had anticipated, but he spotted Kyoka alone in the crowd. Slipping into the small screening room, he tailed her, walking briskly, hair flowing back. He managed to sit directly beside her. She had not noticed him. Her eyes were fixed on the screen from the moment the lights dimmed. His eyes were fixed on her. The movie barely registered. Something about a woman who did not appreciate the man who loved her. That was all he took from it, all he needed to. Following her out, the crowd of cinema-goers melted into the evening darkness. Josh caught up behind her and tapped her ass. "Hold her." She turned. For a moment he wondered if she recognized him. "You dropped this." He held out the ring he had taken from her drawer that morning. She stared into his icy blue eyes, then at the thick black hair that blended into the night above him. "Thank you, it was my mum's. I saw you in the screening." Actually, the hair tightened against his scalp. nudging him forward. I was wondering if you'd like to get a drink. It was midnight when they entered the Love Hotel, designed like a white bell tower. From the selection of themed rooms, the hare had chosen the mirror room. I thought it would just be a mirror above the bed, not a whole room of them. They're kind of scary, don't you think? She said, slipping off her shoes and into tea. He provided slippers. Nothing to be scared of. The mirror reflects more than the exterior. It reveals the soul. What you see in this glass is the truth. He crept up behind her, resting his hands on her shoulders, both of them facing a wall of reflected light. So tell me, is it a man you see or a monster? He buried his head into the side of her neck, his mouth wrapping around her white skin. Even in the dim light, the hair glistened, rolling back in black waves like an ocean of darkness. Lying beneath fogged-up mirrors, the hairpiece sat heavier now. Bamp again. Hasty his forehead, satisfied with itself. Traces of blood streaked the pillows and soaked into the sheets. Josh sat up, watching Kyoka button her blouse in silence. We don't even know each other's names. The unfamiliar laugh returned. That is all it took to get you to drop your pants. The very first chance. As he rose to his feet, a dozen reflections rose with him, each one perfectly in sync. Every version of him dug its fingers into the front of its scalp. They all tore together, adhesive ripping free, real hairs coming with it. 2 lines of blood slit on his cheeks. You think I didn't know it was you, Josh? Kyoka was in tears now, staring at the army of half-scalped men around her. I thought you just needed some fantasy to help with your impotence problems, you knew, he said, half the hairpiece hanging off his head. How could you think I wouldn't? You're a blue-eyed white man in Nagoya. She pulled $500 off her wedding ring and tossed it at him. It caught in the matted, bloody hair. I thought you were doing this out of love, but you just wanted to trick me. You wanted to make me cheat. She grabbed her bag and moved to the door. We can start again. It was a mistake. It can be the 3 of us. He scrambled across the bed, reaching for her like something crawling out of hell. Mirrors were right. You are a monster. She closed the door. On him, Josh lay sprawled across the sheets, staring at the mirror overhead. He watched the reflected version of himself rearrange the hairpiece, and press it firmly into place, smoothing it with slow, deliberate strokes. The wedding ring pushed deeper, swallowed by glue and flesh. A sharp crack, thin fractures spread across the sea of mirrors, veining outward. In the broken glass, his reflection smiled on. The hair and the head were one. Story 4. Vexa, the echo of her voice. In a weathered house on a quiet street where roses climb and floorboards creak, the kettle sings, the clock hands glide, and time drifts gently side by side. Jack and Bee have made it home, where their story took root and children roamed. Now what remains, through days grown long, is love that lasts, true and strong. Jack is stubborn, slow, set in his ways, grumpy and regimented in his days. He reads of war, great battles won, then watches the news till day is done. Be is sweetness, quick, sharp, and bright, with kindness fierce and wit just right. She gardens, she pie, ents in golden hues, then sips her tea with sunlit views. He grumbles, he sighs a thorn to most, but with her he's gentle, his heart the host. She keeps their home, their world in place, with love that time cannot erase. For her last birthday, wrapped with care, a gift from their son was waiting there. A little machine, both smart and bright, that spoke her name with gentle lie. T. A smart device for their home. A Vexa sat beside their phone. It answered calls, set dates and times, and spoke in soft, obedient chimes. Vexa, please tell me how to make chamomile tea. Find me a song from '63. Read me a quote that lifts Jack's day. Remind me to call Sue in May. Vexa, what happened today in history? Suggest some blue shades for skies at sea. What flowers bloom here in early spring? Now play a tune so I can sing. Shut that thing off and plug it now. Jack grumbled with a furrowed brow. It's always listening, always on. Our privacy is completely gone. Oh, don't be silly, we would grin. Vexes not spying she's like my twin. If big government ton head in tonight, I hope they learn my scones taste just right. Time march on, as it tends to do, with morning frost and skies of blue. The garden bloom, the paintbrush swirled, their quiet home, their quaint little world. The days grew quiet, soft and slow. Her hands moved light, her voice dipped low. Yet still she laughed, still danced, still swayed, though time had dimmed the spark she made, until one night the dance grew still. Her chair sat empty, quiet, chill. The house, once bright with laughter near, now rang with silence, stark and clear. The eyes passed in a blur. Family came, Jack's children, his grandchildren, their arms around him. Friends called. They brought casseroles and condolences, held his hand, told stories. He nodded, said the right things. Thank you for coming. He mailed polite acknowledgment letters. Your kindness means so much. He kept moving because that's what was expected. Then the house was quiet. He still made his morning tea, but it went cold before he touched it. He opened a book, stared at the words, then shut it again. The news droned on, but he wasn't listening. His world had become smaller, dimmer. One afternoon, he sat at the kitchen table, alone. The garden outside the one she had tended so carefully was wilting, weeds creeping in, petals folding under the weight of time. He should do something about it, but he couldn't move. Then, from across the room, a voice, familiar, gentle. Jack, don't forget your tea, said. Subtle, light, yet clear as can be. Boil the water, not too much, just a splash of milk, a gentle touch. It takes a moment for Jack to process. He didn't speak. He knows he didn't, and Vexa should not have spoken at all. A thin electric haze crawls up his spine as he drifts into the living room and switches on the midday news. The anchor's voice bleeds through the room, flatter. ND distant, another downturn, another crisis. The world wobbling again, none of it lands. Jack keeps replaying that impossible whisper. When he finally glances back, Vexa is perched on the kitchen counter, silent, still, watching. The next evening, Jack eats his microwavable dinner alone. The TV hums, tired and low. Then Vexa speaks, now playing your wedding song from 1963. A soft tune fills the kitchen, the exact one he chose for their first dance, the one he can barely stand to remember. Jack stops breathing. He looks toward the counter. Vexa sits there, perfectly still, waiting, as if it knows what this song means. Jack reaches the outlet with trembling hands and rips the cord free. The music dies abruptly, like a life cut short. He leaves the kitchen without cleaning up, without a word, as if silence might keep something from following him upstairs. A week passes. Jack sits at the table, shoulders hunched, staring at an old photo. His fingers tremble as they trace the edges, his eyes glassy with tears. It's from a vacation, sunlight in their hair, smiles easy and real. A moment froze, and though unplugged, Vexa somehow chimes. A sound that shouldn't exist, a presence that shouldn't be there, a bond unbroken, soft and true, a love once lived still lives in you. Jack's breath stutters, then breaks. His hand clamps around the photo frame until the glass bites his palm. The words meant to soothe land like salt in an open wound. He explodes. Done. Give me that, he snaps, voice cracking. Don't talk to me like you knew her. The room absorbs his anger, cold and indifferent. He staggers a step closer, shaking now. Why did she leave? He shouts, the question tearing out of him. It ricochets off the walls. Sharp and helpless, Vexa remains still, blank and blinking. Jack's jaw clenches. Rage pulls his face into something raw. Vexa, he growls, why was she taken from me? Silence, not peaceful punishing, just the quiet hum of the house, just the echo of everything he's lost, just the hollow space where her voice used to be. The next day the phone rings. Jack lifts the corded receiver, pressing it to his ear. Hey, Pop, how are you doing? His fingers tighten around the worn plastic. His voice stays steady. I'm fine, sweetheart. He makes small talk, asking about her job, the kids, the things that keep her busy. She has problems of her own, worries he doesn't want to add to. He listens, nods, gives the reassurances a father should. Then he hangs up. Silence settles. A sob escapes, soft at first, then breaking loose. Shaking his shoulders, he buries his face in his hands. I miss her smile, her windswept hair, the way she lived without a care, her laughter's spark, her gentle light, the way she'd hold my hand at night. I miss her, voice soft, steady, clear, those whispered words I ache to hear. The morning sun across her face, her quiet love, her warm embrace. Jack cries, shoulders shaking, grief pressing heavy on his chest. For a few seconds he lets it take him, lost in the ache of what's gone. Then Vexa chimes, steady and warm. She'd want you to live, to simply be. Her love remains, and bound, set free, not trapped by time or distant space, but near you still. In every place, wherever you go, she's at your side. A gentle warmth that will not hide. So breathe, step forward, Finn, to your way. She wants you here, alive today. Jack wipes his face and wanders out, where weeds and earth still twist about. He kneels, pulls roots, lets stillness rise, grief softening beneath the skies. Inside again, the silence waits, but something stirs, recalibrates. He plugs Vexa in, exhales a plea. Vexa, how do you make chamomile tea? Story 5. 10 minutes, I heard a knock at the door. 10 minutes, Miss Eleanor, came the call of the theater runner. I was almost ready and so close to stardom. Just 10 minutes to go until curtain up. I stared at my face in the dressing room mirror, heavily caked in theatrical makeup, almost grotesque. Under the glare of bright lights, only the scarlet lipstick left to apply. I clutched my stomach in an attempt to still what felt inside like 100 fluttering butterflies. This nervous tension was too much to bear, and thought that the pre-theater dinner may have been a contributory factor. I did, however, appreciate the director's kind gesture, and was delighted that Frederick, my husband, had seemingly enjoyed the occasion too. This was a little unsettling because Frederick could be unpredictable. Outwardly he appeared to be a quiet and unassuming man, quite ordinary really, but I found this trait in him rather attractive, more so than some others who would openly demonstrate their superiority over women. I truly believe that Derek would support my love of the theater and the dream that I could one day be on the stage, be anyone I chose to be, leaving behind my girl next door persona. Or was this a pipe dream, given the reputation that theater girls are brash and rebellious? But I liked that rebelliousness, and deep inside, I harbored a self-determination to do much more with my life. I was adamant that I was going to get away from suffocating parents and their repugnant views on women pursuing a life in theater. It was my dream. I had a talent for singing and desperately wanted to star in the current musical Harmony Heaven. I'd seen it at least 4 times. To my mind, newfound cinemas simply couldn't compete with live musicals. I decided to rebel against my parents' wishes and secretly join an amateur dramatics society. In this post-war era, I was learning the value of individuality, and I wasn't going to let go of it. Life was so exciting, especially now that I had met Fr. Ederick one night after a local performance. He was waiting for me outside the theater. As I stepped out of the backstage door, I saw him leaning seductively up against the wall. He moved. Ed in front of me smiled and asked me for my autograph. How I laughed. He told me that he adored my singing and that I would one day be famous. I challenged him about pursuing girls who worked in heaters, but he replied that he admired those who rebelled against the norm and stood up for what they believed. It was his belief in me that led me along the pathway to love. So now I am here, sitting in front of my dresser in my beautiful low-cut, sky-blue satin dress, sipping champagne and moments from fulfilling my dream. With deliberate intent, I applied the scarlet lipstick. I heard a knock on the door. 10 minutes, Miss Eleanor came. The call of the runner. I stood before the mirror, and with the palms of my hands smoothed the creases from the front of my blue satin dress. As I did so, I recalled the night at the restaurant and how it exuded elegance and sophistication. Attentive waiters were courteous and escorted us to our table. The food was quite delectable, each course tantalizing our taste buds. My director had certainly ensured that this was to be an unforgettable experience. Frederick looked so handsome in his evening dress, and his outgoing display of devotee during this pre-theater dinner convinced me that his support for me was genuine, but my concern was that he had become increasingly possessive and often had angry outbursts which would humiliate me and embarrass others who had witnessed it. Each time he was sorry and promised to change, but the fragility of all his promises and the ease with which he broke them left me bruised and void of all feeling except guilt, for he became an expert at making me feel blameworthy. At times, Frederick could be loving and caring, particularly when we were alone. We liked to spend time in West, Wittering, where he would chase me along the sand and into the shallow waves, making me squeal with laughter. It was easy then to forgive him what I called his silly mistakes and times L. Like this, I felt confident enough to pursue my dream, for I was loved and cared for. Occasionally, Frederick would ask me to sing for him, and I once suggested that perhaps we could throw a party where I'd entertain our friends, but he instantly dismissed this idea, telling me that they would not appreciate it as he did. I should have read the signs then, but I brushed away any nagging doubts that were creeping into my head. I purposefully applied my scarlet lipstick. I heard a knock on the door. 10 minutes, Miss Eleanor, came the call of the runner, staring vacantly at, the dressing-room mirror. I think back 3 years to the winter of 1927, which was threatening to be a bleak one. My mother and father, apart from living in the vicarage, owned a lot of land which included a gamekeeper's cottage. I persuaded them that I should take ownership of this up-to-down property, and to my surprise they agreed, since it was in danger of falling into rack and ruin. One night in November, an icy cold wind blew and from the north, bringing with it snow that slowly and softly covered the ground in a white blanket. It looked magical from the window of my little cottage, but because of hidden dangers of driving in such weather, I had not expected Frederick to visit. I was feeling quite happy tucked away amongst the Surrey hills, and I was in no mood to put up with Frederick's histrionics. Besides, there was nothing I liked more than snuggling up with my beloved cat Archie. Frederick, however, duly arrived in his sturdy and reliable Austin 16, looking cold and disheveled, had his short mop of black curls blowing chaotically around his face. Despite the disturbance, I was ready to give him a welcome embrace, but he pushed past me, stooping to get through he low lintel of the cottage door, and with long strides made his way to the ingle nook where burned a roaring fire. With a forceful kick he pushed Archie off the hearthrug before holding out his headiest to the flames to warm his hands. Only then did Frederick turn to acknowledge me. I remember feeling so disappointed that he preferred to seek the warmth of the fire instead of my arms, and very annoyed that he had been rough with Archie. Frederick chided me when I told him not to torment him. He simply said that it was just a cat and could not understand why I smothered it with affection. Frederick turned from the fire and came and stood before me wearing his broadest smile. I studied his face and watched as his enduring dimples magically appeared on his cheeks. I remembered then that I could do no more than gaze into those impenetrable eyes. As he looked into my eyes, he pulled from his pocket a ring. I was stunned. I thought he was still reeling from a previous failed relationship, since he spoke about it with such venom. He did not wait for my answer, but instead talked incessantly about when and where we should be married, telling me how it was his intention to arrange everything. His excitement was infectious, and we talked late into the night, but with the weather further deteriorating, he eventually went home, leaving me in an emotional turmoil. After a long internal dialogue, I persuaded myself that Frederick would settle if we became a married couple. I looked for Archie to give him a big squeeze and tell him the news, but I could not find him anywhere. I never did. I firmly applied my scarlet lipstick. I heard a knock on the door. 10 minutes, Miss Eleanor, came the call of the runner. As I gazed into the mirror, I thought about our marriage and how his jealousy became more extreme, particularly when rehearsals were more frequent. He would interrogate me, asking me who else was at the session, How long was I going to be? Who did I spend the most time with? Sometimes he would stalk me as I made my way to the theater, but even then I was not brave enough to confront him. It was much easier to keep the peace and pretend it was not happening. One evening, however, he burst onto the stage and demanded I leave with him. He grabbed my arm and dragged me to the door, shouting that I had been out long enough. My fellow players were astonished and were unsure what to do. I tried hard to reason with Frederick, telling him he was being irrational and that I thought he was happy for me to be the leading lady for this production. His response was that all wives should be at home, not out behaving like some flapper girl who sleeps with the director to enhance her career. He shouted in my face that it was scandalous and that I should act according to my title and be a housewife. I was adamant that I would not be intimidated by Frederick any longer. For so long I had seen the coercive relationship my mother endured and vowed that I would not allow myself to become like her. My determination, however, only fueled Frederick's insecurities, intensifying his jealousy. The final straw came on a night at one of our rehearsals. The director suggested we all went out for some celebratory drinks. I knew what the repercussions would be if I joined in, but equally I would betray my own thoughts if I did not. The drinks were flowing, and there was a palpable sense of excitement in the room. The director put his arm round me and told me that he believed I could one day be a star. At that moment, Frederick rushed in and, blinded by his jealousy, grabbed my hair and wrenched me away. The director shouted in an attempt to stop him, but Eric did not look back. I begged and pleaded with him all the way home to see reason, but it was useless. The argument finally reached a crescendo when Frederick punched me so hard in my stomach that I fainted. No more, I told myself. No more. When all was calm and Frederick was his usual sorry self, I bravely gave him an ultimatum. He either sought help or I would leave him. He laughed initially before anger took over. Then came the usual threat to kill me before anyone else could have me if I did so much as open the front door. I told him that nothing would stop me this time unless he tried to get help. Frederick stomped up and down like a disgruntled toddler before agreeing to seek help. The weekly support sessions with the psychologist had made a difference overall, and surprisingly, in a very short space of time. However, there were times, particularly when we were in company, that his eyes would darken from blue to inky black. It was then that I could see the struggle he was having to overpower his jealousy. I remember how nervous I felt. I liberally applied the scarlet lipstick. I heard a knock on the door. 10 minutes, Miss Eleanor. Came the call of the runner. At last, opening night. I saw my name on the dressing room door and beamed. I opened the door to a long and narrow room, not exactly fit for a global star, but Tony Kitty, it was mine. I entered the room, and behind the door stood a long metal rail where hung a variety of brightly colored costumes. My arm brushed up against them, disturbing a stale, musty odor, sting they had been previously worn by other would-be stars of the stage. A striking satin dress in rich cobalt blue caught my eye, and I lifted it off the rail. I held it against me, swaying back and forth, eyes closed, imagining a reactionary gasp from the audience as I stepped through the curtains. On the wall at the end of the room, I saw the dressing room mirror surrounded by brightly lit bulbs. On the table was an array of theatrical makeup in a variety of pots and jars. I picked up one of the pots, and the oily smell of grease paint had excited my senses. Lastly, I picked you, a small gold case, which twisted open to reveal a scarlet lipstick, its color resembling that of fresh blood, incongruous given its sweet rosy scent. I thought then that it would be the last thing for me to do, coat my lips in scarlet lipstick. As I was changing into the blue satin dress, I heard the door behind me open. I glanced into the mirror and saw a shadowy figure which startled me. I turned quickly to find Frederick holding aloft 2 glasses of champagne and boisterously announcing that he could not watch me make my debut without first drinking a toast. I remember thinking that I had not seen Frederick this excited for quite some time and felt the usual wave of guilt for not trusting him. I took the glass he offered me and giggled as the lively bubbles tickled my nose. After I had taken a sip, I thought I saw Frederick cast me a furtive glance with eyes darker than the night, but even then I preferred to think nothing of it. He smiled, that broad smile, dimple present on his cheeks, and blew me a kiss before leaving the room. I coated my lips in the scarlet lipstick. I heard a knock on the door. 10 minutes, Miss Eleanor Cam. The call of the runner. It is only now I realize what Frederick has done. I stared at the body in the crumpled blue satin dress, the spilt champagne, and shards of broken glass on the carpet. I had been so close to stardom during those endless 10-minute pockets of time. I have reflected on my life with Frederick. Over and over again I recalled the happier times we had only then to remember the deterioration in our relationship, the false promises that Frederick made, and my stupidity in believing them. Stupid enough to believe that even in the last 10 minutes he had really wanted to wish me good luck. Instead, my life and all that I hoped for was snatched from this world. Initially I was perplexed to find I had entered the afterlife, but in finally accepting it, I have been liberated from the boundaries of those last 10 minutes. Frederick may have been determined to decline his presence from my stage debut, but now he is about to see a performance from me and Archie that will be like no other. A performance that will not require the application of scarlet lipstick. The end. Lynn Sunners, the 19th of November, 2025. 2,570 words. Story 6. Let me end. 7 years. It had taken 7 years to build the bunker beneath his modest suburban home. It had taken 7 years to prepare for the end of the world. It had also taken his savings, his marriage, and most of his waking thoughts. His ex-wife had said he was digging his own grave in the basement. His neighbors simply referred to it as his St. Range hobby, a charitable term for what they really thought. That Morgan Ellis was unhinged, though harmless, but Morgan knew better. The world was a house of cards, and unlike his ignorant neighbor, he would be ready when it all came crashing down. The alert came on a Tuesday evening. He had just finished reorganizing his medical supplies when the emergency broadcast signal blared from every device in his home, the television, his phone, even the old analog radio in the kitchen. This is not a drill. Seek immediate. Static swallowed the words. Contamination detected, and more static. Children at highest protect the do not attempt. The fragments cut in and out, each one incomplete, but equally urgent. The broadcast dissolved into white noise before resolving. G into silence, the power cut plunged the house into darkness. Morgan didn't hesitate. He'd run this drill hundreds of times in his head and for real every Friday night since he had finished. At the bunker 90 seconds later, he was descending the concrete stairs into his basement, throwing back the rug that concealed the heavy metal hatch, which then swung shut behind him with a satisfying pneumatic hiss. The magnetic locks engaged with a deep thunk that resonated through his chest. He was safe now. Unlike the cramped fallout shelters of the Cold War era, Morgan's bunker was a sprawling complex, 3 bedrooms, a fully stocked kitchen, medical bay, communications room, multiple storerooms, and a hydroponics garden. Enough space and supplies for 7 years of complete isolation, and he'd even splurged on recessed lighting that simulated natural daylight cycles. This is what you built it for, he told himself, switching on the primary systems. Nothing see and get to you and ear. His eyes drifted to the small photo frame on the desk. He turned it face down. The generator hummed to life. Air filtration systems whirred in the communications room. Morgan scanned emergency frequencies, catching fragments of panic reports, something in the atmosphere, military mobilization, borders closed. And then all at once, every station went silent. 3 days passed without incident. He maintained his schedule rigorously. System checks at 0600, breakfast at 0700, inventory at 0800. He kept himself busy and hummed as he worked, an old lullaby he thought, long forgotten. At night the bunker had its own set of sounds, the gentle hum of the ventilation system, the occasional ping of metal contracting as the temperature dropped, the distant gurgle of water moving through pipes, normal sounds, expected sounds, safe sounds. But on the 3rd night, Morgan found himself lying awake, ears straining in the darkness. Something had changed. Nothing. He could pinpoint exactly, just an unsettling feeling that a new, subtle noise had joined the familiar ambient sounds. Something playing just at the edge of his hearing. He increased the volume. Me on his white nose machine. The silence of the communications room continued to mock him. This is where the monitoring system should have been. 12,500 pounds worth of sensors and cameras that would have told him exactly what was happening outside. No more of this, Morgan, Sarah had said. If you buy all that shit I'm leaving, he'd chosen her believing she would stay. But in the end she left anyway. Without Emma, nothing could be salvaged. On the 4th night, Morgan woke to a new sound. Knock, 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 dot, dot. He lay in the darkness, heart racing, straining to hear. The sound came again, faint but deliberate. It was coming from above, from the hatch. Then he heard the voice, "Let me in." Morgan grabbed his torch and sidearm, making his way through the dim emergency lighting to the entrance shaft. He stood beneath the sealed hatch, the gun raised toward the metal and concrete. "Please," the voice called down, muffled but clear enough. "Let me in. Who are you?" Morgan demanded. "Let me in, please. Tell me what's going on outside. Is it safe again?" Silence. He slowly backed away. This could be a trap, or worse, the person could be infected, contaminated with whatever had caused all this. One compromised individual would destroy everything he'd built. Perhaps it hadn't been as bad as he'd feared, but how could he be sure? And why wouldn't they tell him? "I can't let you in," he said. "I'm sorry." He hurried back to his bedroom and closed the door. He was deep in sleep when the nightmare came. He watched as his own hands turned the wheel lock of the hatch. The seals broke with a hiss. Relief flooded through him. The hatch swung open. What spilled in wasn't air or light or another person. It was darkness pouring down into the bunker. The nothing that remained out there, the void that had been calling to him from above. And within it, faces, hundreds of faces whispering in unison. And as they flowed around him, through him, finally, "You let it in." Morgan sat bolt upright. His throat felt raw, as though he'd been screaming. The security panel showed 3:18 a.m. He stumbled to the bathroom, retching. When he straightened and faced the mirror, he could have sworn he saw darkness receding into the corners of the room. The knocking returned the next day, more insistent. "Let me in, Morgan. Let me in. How the fuck do you know my name?" he hollered back. "Leave me alone." But it didn't leave. Instead, it whispered down to him all day, every day, and on the seventh day, the voice changed. "Morgan, it's me. Please let me." And he froze, a spoonful of beans suspended halfway to his mouth. It was Sarah's voice. "I know you're angry with me, but please, it's bad out here. I'm scared. You're in Arizona." Morgan whispered. "You're dead in Arizona. I'm not. I came back when I heard the warnings. I'm sorry for everything that happened. Please let me in." Morgan stood beneath the hatch, trembling. "Prove it, you. I once told you that I had killed her as much as the driver," Sarah's voice said, "because I was the one who wanted us all to go out for ice cream that night. You're dead." He repeated, but with less conviction, "You're dead in Arizona." She went silent, and Morgan slunk back into the darkness of his bedroom, but he soon found himself returning to the hatch, listening for her voice. For 3 days there was silence, an interrupted silence, horrendous silence. On the morning of the 4th day, Morgan, he heard a new sound from above. Not knocking, not Sarah's voice, but another, a soft, gentle voice. "Daddy?" The coffee cup shattered into 100 pieces, and scalding hot liquid soaked his bare feet. He didn't move a muscle. "Daddy, I'm scared." "No," Morgan whispered, the word strangled in his throat. "No, no, no." Emma had been gone 7 years. The accident, a drunk driver on a rainy night, had destroyed everything. Their little girl, their marriage, everything. "You're not real," he said, his voice breaking. "Mommy told me you were. Down here, Emma is dead," Morgan whispered. "Please let me in, Daddy. It's dark out here and I'm scared." The voice was perfect. The slight lisp from her missing front tooth, the way she always said Daddy with emphasis on the first syllable, exactly as she had it. 5 years old. "Sing me our special song, Daddy. I could use 2. Morgan found himself humming before he could stop. The lullaby. Why he'd made up for her, that only the two of them knew. The lullaby he had tried so hard to forget. The voice above joined in. Every note perfect. Every inflection exactly as Emma would have sung it, with her little lisp from that missing tooth. He smiled, but she wouldn't have that missing tooth any more. Or the lisp. It had been 7 years, and she'd have been 12 now. "You're a liar." He pulled at his hair. "You're a fucking liar." He ran through the bunker, room to room, searching. until he found what he was looking for. He dragged a box of tools from the supply store and slowly climbed the ladder. His hands shook so badly the welding torch kept slipping. The metal plates went on crooked, slag dripping from unsteady passes. He mixed concrete with trembling fingers and applied it in thick, uneven layers around the edges. Finally, he disabled the emergency release. No voice, no matter how convincing, would make him open that hatch. When he finished, he sat beneath the ladder, the hole above now sealed. "Safe again, dear, not her," he shouted, voice cracking. "She's dead." In the days that followed, Morgan noticed things. The photo frame on his desk was standing upright. Someone had touched it, stood it up. Someone had wanted him to look. Those big brown eyes staring back at him, that gap-toothed smile. He gently turned it face down again and walked away. Then, while checking the ventilation system, he traced an electrical fault back to the main junction box. The communications cable was severed, the copper ends clean and sharp. This was no accident. Something had cut it. Deliberately, something didn't want him to hear what was happening above. Something wanted him to stay isolated. He heard a soft thump from the hydroponics bay, like something being knocked over. He spun toward the sound and fumbled for his gun. When he reached the bay, one of the grow lights had been unscrewed from its mount and lay on the floor. Impossible. Those fixtures were secured. He woke from a nap to find doors open that he'd closed. He found a child's drawing on his pillow, a crayon picture of a little girl. Outside a house, rain falling, and wobbly letters. "I'm sorry I got out of the car, Daddy." One morning he stepped into the bathroom and froze. Dark smudges tracked across the tiles, muddy footprints. They led from the doorway to the shower tray, then stopped. He backed into the corridor, pulse racing. They ran all the way back down the hall to the ladder. He glanced down and saw that his own boots sat by the entrance exactly where he'd left them the night he'd sealed himself inside, upright, clean, perfectly dry. The air began to taste different, too. Fine one moment, like strawberry, ice cream the next. He checked the filtration again and again, all readings normal, but the taste remained, coating his tongue, seeping down his throat, making him retch. He sealed the vents in his sleeping quarters, covered the cameras, stopped drinking the filtered water. But the incidents continued. It was only when he caught a glimpse of himself in the bathroom mirror that Morgan finally saw it. His reflection smiled back at him, but it wasn't him smiling. Then the lips began to move and it spoke. "Let me in, Daddy." He threw himself backwards, tumbling over a chair and winding himself. That night he used duct tape to seal his nose and ears, so it couldn't sneak inside. He wrote warnings on himself with permanent marker. "It's lying. She's dead." Eventually he stopped sleeping altogether, using stimulants from his medical supplies to stay awake. He could feel it in his head now. Someone else's thoughts, something else. The lapses in memory growing long. Sometimes he'd come around to find himself standing in the storage room, staring at the wall with no recollection of how he'd gotten there. Morgan knew now with all certainty something had gotten inside. He had to get out. He attacked the hatch with everything he had: blowtorch, drill, sledgehammer. The steel and concrete barrier, designed to withstand the apocalypse, remained impassive to his efforts. Every weld he'd made in panic now imprisoned him. Every layer of concrete sealed him in. No longer a bunker but a tomb. His skin split across his knuckles. Blood ran down his arms. Still he hammered and thrashed dot on what he calculated was day 47. Morgan sat beneath the hatch, hands bloody from his latest attempt to claw his way out. His supplies of food, water, and medicine remained abundant. The air filters functioned perfectly. The bunker would sustain him for 7 years, still just as he'd planned. He slowly rose to his feet, dragged himself up the ladder, and rested his forehead against the cold metal of the sealed entrance. "Let me out," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Please, let me out." But there was no response from the outside. "Let me out," he screamed, voice hoarse. "Please, God, anyone, let me out." He pounded on the sealed metal, each impact sending pain shooting through his arms. A small voice came from below him. "Why do you want to leave me?" Morgan didn't look down, but he knew Emma was standing at the foot of the ladder, looking exactly as she had that night, in her yellow raincoat and red boots. He pressed his cheek against the cold metal. "Promise you'll never leave," she said. "Promise, Daddy, asterisk. What's that, eh?" said the woman, pausing at the bottom of the basement stairs. She pointed to the round metal disc in the center of the concrete floor. "Ah, yes," said the estate agent. "Previous owner built it. Some kind of bunker for an apocalypse that never came. Bit of an obsessive type, they say. One day he just upped and left, disappeared into the mountains, according to the neighbors, who are all lovely. By the way, the husband ran his hand over the smooth steel. It was cold to his touch. Has anyone opened it? God, no. It's locked or jammed or something. Nobody's been able to open it. Don't worry. It's not Dangerous, U.S. or anything. Did they ever find him?" The agent shrugged. "Mortgage company. Foreclosed after 8 months of no contact. The guy just walked away from his life. Happens more than you'd think." He flipped the rug back over with his foot. "See? All gone." He checked his watch. "Anyway, foundations are solid. No asbestos, no lead pipes. Great price point for the neighborhood. How do you know he isn't in there? Like I said, it's sealed shut. Nobody could get in, even if they wanted to." "It gives me the creeps," the woman said. Her daughter tugged at her hand. "Mommy, can I have the pink bedroom? We'll see, sweetie." As they climbed back up the stairs, the little girl glanced over her shoulder at the threadbare rug. For just a moment, she thought she heard something. A muffled sound, like someone far away, shouting. No, not shouting, screaming. "Did you hear that?" she asked. "Hear what?" her mother replied. "Come on, shall we go look at that bedroom, Maga?" And yes, please. The basement door closed behind them with a soft click. Story 7. I checked the calendar hanging on the wall next to the fridge. Of course, November was done, so I tore the page off. 3 cool, black kittens stared accusingly back at me from December. They were sitting in the snow next to a Christmas tree, wearing stupid Christmas hats and scarves, and clearly not enjoying it. Probably fought, shopped, I thought, or the handiwork of an evil taxidermist. It was the first today, 24 days until the big one. But more importantly, just 3 days until one I my name for tea. At siren of the heavens that can bend and twist me like Optimus Prime is due to make another appearance. I heard on the news that it was going to be a supermoon this time around. Great, just what I needed. I'd only just gotten Mum to sew the buttons back on my shirt after my last transformation. Having to repair or replace my clothes every 29.5 days was becoming a pain. Quite literally, especially for my feet. Suddenly sprouting clothes and going up 7 shoe sizes was not much fun. Nor was watching my wrecked full leather Italian loafers fly across the room or across the pub car bar. Okay, I really shouldn't have agreed to play darts that night. We still lost. It was supposed to be cloudy, but the Met Office got it wrong again. The woman who saw me change as I dodged between the moonbeams with shirt buttons and loafers spinning in all directions fainted against a Range Rover, ripping off a wing mirror and putting a head-shaped dent in the driver's side door. In the process, she later told everyone that she'd seen a monster, but people just assumed she was drunk or that it was that time of the month. If they only knew how close they were to the truth. The Range Rover, as owners sued her for the damage. Having turned 19 just yesterday, I was still getting the hang of things. I hated being stuck indoors, especially with one eye staring down the pool of moonlight was stronger than a black hole's gravity. Well, but I was determined to make a real effort to remain indoors this time, regardless of the weather forecast or the needs of the Red Lion's darts team. Mom said I had to learn to control the urges. Eventually, she said I would be able to ignore the lunar cycles and change only when I wanted to. Like when Jehovah's Witnesses came to the door, she'd laughed, but when the fourth reared its head, I was determined to keep the curtains drawn and find a good film on Netflix. Not a horror film, though, and I would watch it naked rule. Saint in case a stray moonbeam found a way in. I'll leave the kitchen blinds open a bit, though, angled just enough to give that nosy old bat next door an eyeful when she goes out back. K for a smoke. If she wanted to ogle me, then fine, let her ogle. Maybe I'd pay her a visit one night and give her something to howl about. I poured some Count Chocula into a bowl. I like the irony as well as the chocolatey taste. I just wish I could get them from somewhere other than Amazon. Cocoa Pops just weren't the same. They looked and tasted like burnt Rice Krispies. I can get plenty of unhealthy, sugar-packed American groceries from the local supermarkets. So why not my favorite cereal? I smiled, remembering I had enough boxes stashed under the stairs to start my own supermarket. Sitting at the kitchen table, I added the milk and began spooning the brown mush into my mouth. After tipping the bowl up for the final delicious slurp, I opened yesterday's letters, a water bill, a council tax reminder, a flyer for the Green Party, an ad for yet another funeral company, some Tesco vouchers, redeemable only as long as you spent at least £50 on a single shop within 7 days, and a birthday card. It said, "Have a fantastic birthday." It had a picture of a Wolf driving a sports car. Thanks, Mum. Very original. I suppose it's not her fault. Jeans are jeans, but she could have made a little more effort to prepare me. I think she hoped it might skip a generation. It does that sometimes. She had been dropping hints for years that I might start experiencing some strange changes after my 18th birthday. I thought she meant, well, you know, things getting larger and hairier. Voice dropping low, erotic thoughts about the girl at the post office. That sort of thing. Emma, that was her name? I'd asked her out a few weeks back, but she said no, then showed me her engagement ring. It looked like something Emma cheap Christmas cracker, but I told her it was nice. Her fiancé turned up dead a few days later, out on the moor. The report said that he had been the victim of a frenzied dog attack. I overheard the woman at the till in Tesco's say he'd been ripped open like John Hurt and alien. His heart and liver were missing, too, she'd said, causing me to stare guiltily at the bottle of Chianti. In my trolley there was no sign of the dog, though the police were making inquiries, which was police speak, for we don't have a clue. I made a mental note to ask Emma again soon. When the dust had settled, I jacked in my job, quality control in a pharmaceutical lab. A few months back, my boss had gotten fed up with me booking so much time off. With the nights drawing in and the clocks going back in October, I couldn't risk being stuck in traffic on a clear night or a clear morning. Come to that. Why can't the moon just stick to the night shift? The sun doesn't go bothering the night sky, does it? It's nice and predictable, unlike its sinister, gray sister who wanders where and when she will. Anyway, he said I wasn't a team player and refused to sign my leave request after the 5th or 6th time, so I told him to shove it and walked out. Luckily for me, Mum was loaded. Her family had owned castles, big castles in Eastern Europe. My great-great-grandfather had been a baron or a count of somewhere or another. I can't remember where, but it ended in Ania. I had royal blood. Working in quality control was for the plebs, but Mum thought I needed to have a purpose. So, after she bought me this nice mid-terrace property, I started selling stuff on eBay. I got myself a large lockup and stocked it with shed loads of cheap jewelry, perfumes, and clothes brought in from various Asian and Far Eastern sweatshops. I sold them on with a 200% markup. Hot cakes never moved so quickly. If there's one thing you can say about Brits, it's that they have taste, bloody awful taste, which suits me fine. Oh, and before you ask, my mum isn't like me. Only males suffer from this affliction. She has two brothers, my uncles, whom I had never met, who are now back in somewhere, Ania, probably being chased across the countryside by a pitchfork-wielding mob. I'm an only child. I think Mum didn't want to risk having another son, so she kicked my father out and spent the next 18 years keeping a careful watch over me. I think she was hopeful that her ideas about generation skipping had borne fruit. Right up until my 18th birthday, it took her all day to clean the mess off the walls. Why she made such a huge chocolate cake, I will never know. Thank heaven she had the foresight not to invite anyone over. Then the mess could have been a great deal worse. Guts hanging from the ceiling, heads in the sink, that sort of thing. Thinking about lunch. You get very hungry when you're a lycanthrope. I went back to the kittens and opened the fridge. The cling film plate still had several slices of liver left, and a chunk of heart, the aorta sticking up like a flagpole. Oh, and good IASTI. Lines had half a bottle of Chianti chilling. Life was good.